各位傳媒
Friends of the media, good afternoon. Today I will review the work of the sixth term of the Legislative Council, as we still have a continuation of the LegCo meeting. The figures I quote will be as at yesterday, the 16th of July. After my briefing, I will take questions from everyone. We have seen a lot of unprecedented problems and challenges in this term. At the beginning of our term, 6 members have been ruled by the court that their oath-taking was invalid, and they were disqualified. On top of that, there are 2 members that have been ruled by the court to be improperly elected in a by-election of the LegCo. They no longer stayed as legislators. This is the first time that it's happened in the LegCo. During this term, we've had 141 council meetings lasting for 1,711 hours. The length of time of this term is less than the last 2 for 2 main reasons. First, we have missed the most number of council sittings in this session. It is because of the unprecedented damage caused by protesters last year. On top of that, there is a serious outbreak of COVID-19 this year. Altogether, 7 council meetings, 1 chief executive question time, and 1 question and answer session did not take place. We have lost about 142 hours. In this session, it was only until May when the chairperson was elected in the House Committee. During that period of time, there was no deputy to take over my duty in a council sitting. As a result, I have to arrange for meal breaks and short breaks for the 17 council sittings. We've lost altogether 60 hours. I'd like to say that over all these years, apart from regular meetings, we have only held 2 special meetings to deal with specific agenda items. However, in February and March, when the outbreak was serious, I have called 2 meetings to deal with specific and urgent items. They are relating to the urgent questions of novel coronavirus outbreak, as well as the appropriation bill resolution. We have seen a total of 501 times when quorum call was asked, wasting about 87 hours. It may only take 5% of the council meeting time. The length of time wasted is still a lot. Although the number has dropped significantly compared to the last session, which stood at 1,490, wasting about 223 hours. Well, meeting abortion as a result of lack of quorum stood at 14 times, which is less than last session. We have lost about 73 hours, which is also less than the last session. This is mainly to do with the amendment to the rules of procedure in December 2017. Since then, there has been 7 times when the meeting was aborted for lack of quorum. And at that time, I have, based on the amended rules of procedure, decided to resume the meeting. In this term, there are 97 times when members were ordered to withdraw because of gross disorderly conduct, which is higher than the 75 times in the last session. It involves 25 members, which is higher than the 7 members in the last session. It is also the highest over the many terms. And in 2 of the meetings, members threw foul-smelling unknown substance in the meeting venue, forcing the meeting to suspend or it resulted in a change of venue. In 141 council meeting in this term, we've had 12 question and answer sessions when the chief executive answered 160 questions. At the beginning of this session, the chief executive has taken on board my suggestion to add CE question time lasting for about 30 minutes since January 2018. So the members will have more chances to ask direct questions of the chief executive. The chief executive has attended 14 of these question times and answered 126 questions. Members have asked 495 questions seeking oral reply, and members have also put forward 148 urgent questions seeking an oral reply, of which 12 of them have been allowed. Altogether, members have asked of these questions seeking oral reply 2,533 supplementary questions, and members have also asked 1,772 questions seeking written reply. The government has introduced 90 bills. So far, 73 of them have been passed. That includes the Appropriation Bill 2017, which has lasted the longest. So far, there are still 11 bills on the agenda item of the last council meeting. They have to be dealt with before the end of tonight. It's only when we have dealt with all these 11 bills that we can surpass the number of bills passed in the last session. Altogether, members have proposed 1,751 amendments on the 23 government bills. 617 of them have been allowed. I'd like to add that I have set down a principle of one CSA for one subhead, encouraging members to consolidate their CSAs. As a result, the number of CSAs moved has dropped back to a normal level. And for the number this year, which is 124, it is the lowest over 8 years. In order to respect members' right to scrutinize bills and to move amendments, and to ensure that LegCo will operate in an orderly, efficient, and fair manner, I have set for the first time the total scrutiny time for controversial bills outside the appropriation bill. That include the Guangdong-Shenzhen Hong Kong High-Speed Rail Collocation Bill and the National Anthem Bill. In the end, the time taken for the scrutiny is more or less the same as the period I have set down.
And worth attention is that the Labor for Secretary for Labor Welfare on the January 9th and 2020 meeting, in accordance with the RRP 54.4, to move that the 2019 Employment Amendment Bill, and after suspending the second reading debate, referring it to the Maheno on Manpower instead to the House Committee, the motion has been passed. And that is something unprecedented since the formation of LegCo. And this bill has resumed the second reading debate on 24th of June meeting and passed on the 9th of July. In this term, LegCo, there are 4 members who tabled the 4 members bill. 1 was passed after amendment, and 2 were passed without amendments. And the remaining second reading motion been vetoed. In this term, LegCo, by way of negative vetting, the government had tabled 701 items of subsidiary legislation, of which 93 of those were due to the failure of the House Committee to elect a chair, and the deputy chair were not able to set up a bills committee to scrutinize. The scrutiny of the 9 other items will continue under the next term. And the other were passed without amendments. The government also moved 42 motions. that way of positive vetting to approve or to amend the subsidiary legislation, which were all passed. In this term LegCo, the government has moved one government motion with no legislative effect, which is the motion to take forward the follow-up task of the co-location arrangement at the West Kowloon station of the Guangzhou-Shenzhen-Hong Kong Express Link, which was passed. Furthermore, the government had once issued notice that on the January 23rd and the 27th of March meeting of 29, that it will move two motions on the implementation of the tunnel toll adjustment arrangements. These two motions are without legislative effect, but the administration withdrew the notice subsequently. In this term LegCo, the government have moved 5 motions related to judicial appointments, including the motion to appoint the Chief Justice of the Court of Final Appeal, which were all passed. In this term LegCo, there's some the following highlights on the members' bill. In accordance to 49 RP 91A bill, the members have moved 10 motions to censure, which is the highest, and 3 of the censure motions have been referred to an investigation committee to complete its work and submit the report to LegCo. And second, there were a large number of motions to summon by members. In accordance to Basic Law Section 73, 5 and 10, the members have moved 26 motions to summon the relevant persons to produce document or testify. And this kind of motions appear for the first time in this term LegCo, 11 of which were vetoed, 6 of them expired, and 9 were not dealt with due to the end of term. And in accordance with the LegCo Power and Privilege Ordinance, the members have moved 10 motions to appoint a select committee, which were all vetoed, and 9 of those were not dealt with due to the end of term. Furthermore, the members also moved 13 motions to amend the rules of procedures, 5 of which were passed, including on December 27th, a member's motion to making a substantive amendment to the ROP, and 2 motions in accordance with Article 73(9) of Basic Law, accusing the Chief Executive of committing serious offenses or the dereliction of duty, which were both vetoed. In this term LegCo, the members have debated 75 members' motion with no legislative effect. In the previous, compared to the previous term of 100 to 25, we substantially reduced. I must point out that many of these motions, including a large number of motions to summon, have been queuing on the agenda. The LegCo in this term did not have the opportunity to debate members' motion without legislative effect, which was the first time since the establishment of LegCo. Furthermore, in accordance with RP 16.2, the members have moved 37 motions to adjourn, the highest in history. 4 of them were ruled admissible, and another 4 motion to adjourn in accordance to RP 16(4) were ruled admissible. In this term LegCo, the LegCo President have issued 215 written rulings and letters, the highest in all previous term. 108 involving urgent oral questions, 3 involving general oral questions. The rest, 104 rulings and letters, mainly involved members' bills and amendment to government motions, the resolution on subsidiary legislation, members' bills, and the motions to adjourn. That's the end of my report. And President Commissioner Radio, as has seen that the House Comm have been subject to filibuster by the Pan Democrats, as you can see that back in March we have consulted outside legal opinion. And since last October, the House Committee had been filibustering for 6 months before action was taken. I remember you said that you hope that the House Committee can rectify itself. However, under that political atmosphere, isn't that a bit naive? Would you consider that is too slow? If some bills were not able to pass, would that be your responsibility? Well, looking at the popularity, well, it seems that yours was much lower than previous presidents, and some independents refused to call you president, but calling you the member Leung instead. So, what's your opinion, and what do you think the reasons? And third, and the issue of the national security law, and members were concerned that whether the LegCo power privilege ordinance will be superseded by the national security law so that their freedom of speech will not be protected. I know the legal advisor is looking into it. So what's the progress? You asked the 3 questions. I almost forgot what the first question was about. So let me start from the third question. The legal advisor is still studying basic law, Article 77, and well as at Cap 382. But after studying in detail, the legal advisor will provide a document to members. Well, the Secretary of Justice had made it really clear. If members have any questions, they should seek their own legal opinion, which will be clear. And for inside the chamber, for example, the Westminster AB, the members need to respect each other to deal with the bills. Well, each legislature might have their own differences or may have some common ground. For each bill, the members should try their best to scrutinize bills. However, it should be based on the mutual respect. Well, this term, we have seen quite a wide range of problems. On one hand, the members claim they will not recognize you as the president. On the other hand, they're written to me and requesting me to make a ruling on something.
I have a lot of experience in the Legislative Council. Members may do different things at different positions. In a political stage, there are different roles to be played by members. What's your first question? About the House Committee. In the Legislative Council, the President will mainly deal with affairs relating to Council meeting. For the other panels and committees, it would be for their own chairperson to deal with the respective affairs. Say, for example, in the last term, when there was filibustering in the Finance Committee, members sent letters to Mr. Jasper Zhang, the then president, to deal with it. But Mr. Zhang left it to the chairperson of the House Committee to deal with it. If the president would take matters in their own hands and exercise Rule 92 of the Rules of Procedure to intervene, as I've said on different occasions, that means that it is for the president to have the final say. As I said, that these matters should be dealt with by the respective panels and committees. It's stated very clearly in the Rules of Procedure that I am the only legislator who cannot be involved in debates. I trust that members will have the wisdom to deal with it. If the committee or panel cannot operate, rendering the Legislative Council unable to conduct business, it's only then that I can get involved. But I have to be very careful. I have to obtain internal legal advice As a precaution, I also have to approach a local senior counsel for legal advice, and at the same time, I'll have to find a constitutional expert familiar with the Commonwealth system to assist me. The first step is to ask the House Committee to correct itself. Failing that, then I will be given options and I may give instructions, as I did, to the chairperson of the Finance Committee to help resolve the matter. If you ask whether it was too late, as I said, if it's for the president to swiftly deal with everything, then the president might have too much say in all the matters. There are still 11 bills to be dealt with. Members will have to decide how they are going to deal with these bills. The president's duty is to include these bills in the agenda. The manner they are scrutinized and how council time is used is for the decision of members. Perhaps you can save your questions to other members. If numerous bills cannot be passed, and most of them are non-controversial because most of them are just related to livelihood issues or the economy, I think members should be asked a question. I'm from RTHK. I'd like to ask, in the past 4 years, you've experienced many different things. What is the most memorable? Do you have any regrets? Anything that you wish you had done better? In the next term, are you interested in being the president again? Do you think that it is an arduous task to be the president? Lastly, how would you describe the past 4 years? For the first few years, the relationship between the executive and the legislature was rather good. However, it deteriorated. How would you describe the changes of the relationship? As I've said, that it's been quite a ride. It's like a roller coaster. Sometimes we're on a high, sometimes all of a sudden we're plunged to an abyss. The relationship between the executive and the legislature depends on the overall political atmosphere in Hong Kong. If the overall atmosphere is good, then it would be good. For the first few years, the relationship between the LegCo and Mr. Leung was rather tense. Then we had Mrs. Carrie Lam. That was honeymoon period. It was the relationship actually was quite good. We made suggestions about the question time, and when items were proposed, the government would swiftly deal with them. It was a very good time regarding livelihood issues. However, there was a point in time when the relationship turned for the worst. It was when certain political proposals was floated. I think it depends on how the executive would lobby the legislature to deal with various proposals and bills and how to deal with them. If you ask me how I see the relationship between the executive and the legislature, as I said, it's like watching that movie. It's a favorite song of Mr. Lo Wai Kwok. It's a song about the protagonist being surrounded by the devil and the angel, both trying to influence him. So it changes. As president, my job is to deal with the agenda and chair the council meeting in an impartial way. I will do my job as best as I can. I don't have any regrets. Would you like to be the president again in the next term? I'll use the next few days to ponder over this before I will give you an answer. Thank you. I'd like to ask about the relationship between the legislature and the executive. I can see that the relationship between the two camps in the LegCo has deteriorated. How do you see that? Has it gone to a stage when they won't even talk to one another outside the chamber? The chief executive refused to attend question and answer sessions in recent days. What is your role to enhance communication between the LegCo and the government? The national security law is very important. Members asked to ask questions about this, but they have been disallowed. Do you think that the role played by the Legislative Council has diminished? It is not just bipartisan. We have a very wide spectrum. Well, the loyalists sometimes gave me headaches because there is a wide spectrum even amongst them. And for the opposition, there is another spectrum. Some of them would be willing to talk to you, and some of them, after talking to you, will continue to do their own things. I think it's down to the general political atmosphere. If it's good, then it's good. 16 years ago, when I first became a legislator, we would chat, we would eat together. And I remember there was a time when we would share a brandy. Of course, when it comes to voting, our stance might be different, but we are on talking terms. It's amicable. If the political atmosphere improves, if they share the same goal, then they would work together. Would the government lobby harder to garner support from members of the public and from legislators? Then it would be easier for the president. As you can see, say in the past day or two with the Monetary Provident Fund, not all members from the opposition opposed to it. And not all members from the loyalist camp support it. I hope that the executive would understand this. And I hope that members in the next term would understand that as well. As I said, we all started from the same point. We want Hong Kong to be better. So our differences is actually not that great. If we remember that, it would be conducive to the operation of the LegCo.
Speaker number, national security law. Well, we have studied that. Well, that's not the work of the government. When members ask urgent questions, they only question the government's work. That's why it may appear that it will not allow the urgent oral questions, that we're really acting in accordance with the rule of procedure. As you said, after the national security law has been enacted, then the administration to come to LegCo for questions. But it really get to urgent, because would actually that we would convene a joint panel meeting. I see that the administration keep a fairly good response there. Well, even though the time allocated was far enough, but however, the LegCo time is always limited. Well, globally, or there's a much wrestling between the U.S. and China, and there was also imposing sanctions on political figures. And after the national security law, some of the provisions may have penalize on collusion with foreign forces. Would it affect the legislative cooperations with foreign legislatures? Well, first thing, well, for the national security law relevant provisions, I don't see that the exchanges between the different legislatures would have any problems. For example, if the U.S. Congress have invited a LegCo delegation to the U.S., I don't see that they're having any problems. I'm not colluding with foreign countries to breach this national security law. Well, for the general workings of the LegCo, in this past few weeks, I've met quite a few foreign consuls where we had communicated. Of course, they were touched on the Hong Kong in general and also the national security law. I don't see problems with that. And second, I don't know any national secrets, so how could I be colluding with foreign governments? I think legislators should rest assured to continue carry out their work and communicate with different personalities. Speaker not a mic. Well, for the foreign lawmakers being sanctioned by the China, would the Hong Kong take any measures? If the central government impose sanctions, then I must follow the central government's ruling.
Okay. How would you describe the current relationship between some of the lawmakers in Hong Kong and the central government? Do you think this is like the worst time ever? And I remember that you said one of the things that you want to do is to improve the relations. Is there still room for improvement now? My second question is, you talked about how the big political environment is perhaps when it's bad, it's also straining on the relationships between the different camps of lawmakers and also the opposition and the government. What sort of advice do you have for both sides right now, seeing how strained the relationship is? Do you see a way out, perhaps not only just for LegCo and the government, but also for Hong Kong in general? Thank you.
I think I said publicly that, for 23 years after Hong Kong returned to motherland and become Hong Kong SAR, the relationship between the pandemics and central government are not visible. And while, this is, quite regrettable, you should, no matter how much your differences are, you should establish a direct, contact with central government to voice out your opinion. Now, you can see that, some of our members can go to America, can go to England, Germany, and to go to our consul general's house to have dinner and things like that. Why can't they at least have regular meetings, even if they voice their differences? I think an essential government is not a foreign government. So I do wish that a direct link between different parties with central government, or at least with the liaison office, is the way to go. I think both my predecessor and myself have tried, but I think we are not getting successful on our efforts. But I think it's essential for Hong Kong, especially for Hong Kong people, for different parties to have regular dialogue with central government. So I think that is my wish. Obviously, I think with the political climate in Hong Kong, the only way out is for different parties and the government work together for the common good of Hong Kong people. I have, talked to a lot of you on that. There are a lot of areas that we have common grounds, and we are not, directly opposite, like in education, the care of the elderly, the medical side, IT, and so on and so forth. There are plenty of rooms for us to start working for the common good of Hong Kong people. If you remember that when the Kerry becomes CE, the first thing she gave 500 million, 50億, 500 million to education, similar sum to IT, and also a lot of around that amount to social welfare. If you check it, so I think Kerry did show, offer olive branch. But suddenly when the high-speed rail bill came, and then the FOO, and suddenly, the relationship just turned sour. But government and pandemics should look at the goods they can do together for the common good of Hong Kong people.
I'm sorry, the political climate, the political struggle is so big right now. How can they still see?
The common good of Hong Kong people is the only common ground we can get together.
President, well, now that we get to the end of this term, while the confrontations at LegCo is getting more severe, and sometimes it would affect the operations at LegCo, while some of the resisting candidates that they will have a confrontational acts when they get elected, are you worried that for the a lot of the confrontation would affect the progress of scrutinizing the bills or even paralyzing the legislature, which will even halt the work of LegCo? Well, in my view, the LegCo does not belong to a particular legislator and doesn't belong to the president as well. The LegCo belongs to all of Hong Kong people. So for Hong Kong people to elect the kind of legislator, they're free to do so. And we all hope that the legislators go, do something good for themselves and for Hong Kong. As for how the legislator choose to elect it, use the power, they have to give some careful thought. If it would like to paralyze LegCo, well, even if you appoint a God as president, well, if it's within the RP that you would have to allow it. Well, the LegCo belongs to all of Hong Kong. As for how do we safeguard it or use their vote, that the public will need to be responsible for themselves.
President, can you comment on the relationship between yourself and the Democrats in the past 4 years? Of the past 4 years, which is the legislator that you can most identify with? I think the working relationship between myself and legislators are quite well. For some legislators who have been members for a very long time, say over 10 years, and then we are on talking terms. But for those who have only been members for a very short time, maybe they don't want to talk to me. As to which one I would rate higher than others, well, different members have different roles. We need 60 members to form the LegCo. Each member has their own role to play. Each has their own advantage. Some may play a role that would make LegCo meetings difficult. Some members fully understand what their roles are. I think it's for all members to work together to make LegCo work. I sit there, I complete the agenda items, and then it's for members to decide, or otherwise, the various items and how much they'd like to spend on it. It's a collective decision.
So a few months ago, Beijing's offices in Hong Kong openly criticized the behavior of a few.
聽得唔清楚，你咪近啲啊。
Okay. A few months ago, Beijing's offices in Hong Kong openly criticized the behavior of a few opposition lawmakers. Was it an unprecedented move, and what implications did that have on the relationship between Beijing and the local legislature?
呢個我就好難去評論喎。
It's very difficult for me to comment on that. Well, central authorities made some comments on the performance.
For me to comment on how the central government official comment on our fellow legislator, okay? And I think it would be up to the different legislator to respond. But as I mentioned earlier, that even you have differences in opinion, it was still strongly advisable to have a relationship or linkage or a way to communicate with central government officials so that your own views can be transmitted to central government directly. So that's my wish that all different parties in future LegCo can communicate with central government directly. Okay, 唔該晒。